Hello, I'm Cindy Winget, the author of The Apparition, and welcome to my channel. So, in this vlog, we're going to be at the cemetery, and so I thought it only fitting to talk about some books that are set at the cemetery. So I was going to do this a couple of weeks ago when it was a little bit warmer, but unfortunately I got sick and my family got sick, and I just couldn't get to it till today. So of course, the day I finally want to come, it's windy and it's cold. It's like 40 degrees outside, so hopefully this doesn't take too long. But I have a couple of middle grade books I want to talk about. We have Mystery James Digs Her Own Grave. So this is a brand new release that just came out, I think this month. So her and her family own a funeral home, but then one day they're doing a funeral and a priceless heirloom goes missing. And so now they're being blamed for it, and so she wants to prove that her family didn't have anything to do with it. So her and her best friend get together to prove this, and they get involved with a ghost at the cemetery who's like half ghost, half vampire, and they meet a grave digger, and I think they also meet like some wealthy people in the town that are trying to cover up secrets. So it sounds like a fun time. And then similar to that, we have Death and Douglas, because this boy also grew up in a funeral home, and so he's played around in graveyards. I don't really know anything else about this. This one has been on my shelves the longest, so I'm not too familiar with what the premise of this one is. And then another new release that just came out this year is It's Watching by Lindsay Curry, and this is about a group of friends who sneak into a cemetery on Halloween night, and they try to raise the ghost of a famous ghost to prove that ghosts are real. But after they're chased out of the cemetery by a security guard, they discover a meme on all their phones about this abandoned farmhouse that tries to lure you to its presence. And so at the end of this meme it says, "I'm watching," and so they're trying to figure out where these memes are coming from. And then by that same author we have It Found Us. This is about a group of kids who go to a cemetery to play a game of hide and seek in the middle of the night, but one of the kids just up and vanishes and they can't find him. So now they're trying to figure out what happened. And then the last middle grade book that I have to talk about is called The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. And this is about a boy who is raised from infancy inside a cemetery by the ghosts that reside in that cemetery. And they teach him all kinds of cool tricks that he could do that nobody else that's alive can do. And then I have a couple of adult books, the most obvious being Pet Sematary by Stephen King. So if you somehow don't know what this is about, there's this cemetery where you bury your pets called Pet Sematary, but apparently when you bury a pet in the cemetery, they don't always stay dead. There's a lot more involved in it, but if you haven't read it or seen the movie, I don't want to spoil it for you. This is probably my favorite Stephen King novel of all time. Very good, very sad, well worth your time. And then we have Unburied Carol by Josh Mallerman, and this is a dark, macabre take on the Sleeping Beauty tale. And so we have this woman who dies all the time, but it's not really death. She more or less goes into a coma. Not a lot of people know about it, except her husband finds out about it because, you know, he's her husband. And this was not a marriage of love. He just wanted her for her money. And so when he finds out that she has these coma-like deaths, he decides that he's going to declare her dead for real and bury her alive and claim her money. I haven't read this one, but it sounds really cool. And then we have The Orphan of Cemetery Hill. And this is about a girl who has the ability to speak to ghosts. And this is taking place during the Victorian times when people were obsessed with seances and talking to the recently departed. And so her aunt wants to exploit this gift of hers and get people to pay for these seances, but she doesn't like doing that, and so her and her sister run away. But she gets separated from her sister, and she gets adopted by this kind caretaker of the Boston Cemetery. But she discovers in the cemetery that her father takes care of that there's these grave robbers called the Resurrection Men, and she thinks they're up to something nefarious, and so she wants to discover what it is exactly that they're doing. And then we have The House by the Cemetery, and this is about an abandoned house that's set next to the cemetery, and it's said to be haunted by the ghost of this witch. And this man decides to buy this purportedly haunted house and turn it into a haunted house attraction for Halloween. So he buys it, but of course, as he's putting this attraction together, he hears bumps in the night and different macabre, terrifying things start to happen. And now he's thinking that the witch really is in this house. And this witch is very happy because she needs a bunch of people in this house on Halloween so that she can perform a ritual. Because even though she's dead, she performs this ritual with all the tourists that are coming to this house, then she can come back alive. And then we have the graveyard apartment, and this is set in Japan, and this young family rent this apartment right next to this cemetery, which in Japan is very bad luck, but they didn't realize it was next to a cemetery until they'd already moved in. And so all of this terrifying stuff starts to happen, and one by one their neighbors start to move out, but for whatever reason they can't. I'm guessing financial reasons. And they end up having to stay, and there's apparently an evil entity living in their basement. Then we have Her Fearful Cemetery, and this takes place at the Highgate Cemetery in London. And we have this 44-year-old woman who dies of cancer, and her husband is obsessed with finding her ghost, which is apparently trapped in her house. With the help of her 2 twin nieces, her boyfriend Robert wants to figure out a way to free her. So I thought I would read one of these books. Some of them I've already read, some of them I haven't. Thought it'd be cool to read a book about a cemetery in the cemetery. So I think I'm gonna go for one of the middle grade books because I could probably read the whole entire thing while I'm here. If I chose an adult book, then I would probably only be able to read like a third of it or half of it. I think I'm gonna go with Death and Douglas because this one has been on my shelves the longest and I really need to get to it. I kind of like to switch it up and stuff, so I'm gonna go find a different spot in the cemetery to sit, and I'll chat with you in a minute. So the only thing I really know about this book is that it's a middle grade book about this boy who lives at a funeral home. So he's been around death pretty much his entire life. So that's really all I know about it. That's all I really want to know about it going in. So I'll let you know when I get to a stopping spot and I'll tell you more about it. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and sit under this beautiful tree and start my book. I got some hot chocolate. And I got a donut. So this looks like a perfect place to do a little bit of reading. So I've made it to chapter 6, and basically we're just getting a feel for who our main character is. Like I said, he's been around death and cemeteries his whole life. He plays around in cemeteries like it's his playground. So death isn't something that's new to him. However, there's suddenly a murder in his small town, and up until now he kind of thought of death as, old people or a natural part of life, and he never really conceptualized having your life cut short before your time. And so now it doesn't feel so safe anymore, and has all these questions about death and about the people that go to the funeral home where his family works. And it kind of reminds me of the show My Girl, if you've seen that. I think it came out in like the 80s or 90s, and it has the same theme and the same premise where you have this little girl that lives at a funeral home and she has to deal with, I don't want to necessarily say the trauma, but she has to deal with death and what it means. And this is similar to that, and I love that movie, so this is a great start. So I really like our protagonist. I think he's really fun, and he's a little bit strange, macabre, which is expected. It's so windy and my hair keeps getting blown in my face. But anyways, I'm gonna keep reading and I'll update you probably when I'm about halfway. Okay, I'm back for another update. So I've made it about halfway through. I'm on chapter 14 and I've changed locations once more. And there's like a whooshing noise. If you can hear that, I apologize. I looked around and I honestly don't know what it is. I thought maybe it was like a broken sprinkler, but I don't really see anything. So I don't know what that whooshing noise is. But anyways, the sun has come out and it's actually warmed up a little bit, so that's nice. I think I'm actually gonna even take my jacket off. It's getting a little bit warm. I mean, it's not super warm, but it's not as cold as it was. So I'm gonna keep my gloves on though. Anyways, so back to the book. So I'm about halfway and I finally got to a part that I was really hoping for, because I chose this book because it takes place on Halloween, because all the other middle grade books, well, there is one other one that takes place on Halloween, but all the rest of them just take place in the cemetery. So I wanted to read one that took place on a cemetery and on Halloween. And like I said, this was the oldest one on my shelves I hadn't read yet, so that's why I chose this one. So I finally got to a part that I was hoping for, because it has all the Halloween vibes that I want from this time of year. I read horror books all year long, and so during October I really want to read books about the actual holiday of Halloween and have all the autumnal vibes. So in chapter 13 we just got to them going to a Halloween festival / carnival. So that was a lot of fun. They have caramel apples and cider, and they have corn mazes and all this stuff. And this town that he lives in, they make these really big pumpkins, like ginormous pumpkins that they turn into giant jack-o'-lanterns, and they have a prize every year for the biggest and best jack-o'-lantern, and it was pretty fun. So I really enjoyed that. This murder that took place in his little town ends up being a serial killer. And so now him and his friends have taken it upon themselves to figure out who is terrorizing their town and to get them out of there so that it can be a safe, nice place again. And like I said, he's still dealing with death and what it means. And now when he helps his parents out at the funeral home, it's a little bit weirder for him knowing that not all of the people have natural deaths like he thought. But I really love that theme. I really love the insights into it. I think it's great for a middle grade book. So I'm quite enjoying it. I think it's pretty well written and I think it's really fun. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up and then I will let you know my thoughts and feelings. I'm probably just going to stay here this time. Okay, so I have now finished Death in Douglas, and I thought this was great. I thought this was a really good middle grade novel. It had a purpose, it had a plot, it didn't have a lot of fluff, it just got right to the point, and I really enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed our main character, Douglas. He's 11 years old, and even when he's not at the funeral home performing his duties, he still wears this ill-fitting suit, and he has a different tie every day, and everybody's always commenting on his different ties, and I thought that was pretty cute. This definitely had the feel of a coming-of-age story because of Douglas's loss of innocence and, you know, dealing with death and dealing with adult things that he hasn't had to experience yet, and also with the bittersweetness of having to grow up. Like, him and his friend were out trick-or-treating, and his friend made a comment that this was probably the last time that they were going to go trick-or-treating because they were getting too old for it. And you know, that made him sad to realize that some of these things that he has really enjoyed in his life are coming to an end. And I feel like this is pretty timely for me because I have a daughter who's 10 and she's also grappling with growing up. She really does not want to grow up, and she's struggling with it. She doesn't want to start doing boring teenage things and have to give away her toys and have to put away her make-believe stuff, you know, and I keep telling her that she doesn't have to grow up any faster than she has to. There's always going to be time to be a teenager and be an adult. You only have one childhood, and just enjoy it. And if people in her class grow up a little bit faster and want to start doing more mature things, then let them. But, you know, just worry about yourself. And if you still want to play with stuffed animals and toys and you still want to, you know, do these different things, then go ahead and do them because they make you happy. So I don't know if that helped at all, but she learned about the truth of Santa Claus this year because she keeps asking if he's real or not. So I finally told her that he wasn't because she stumbled upon some presents down in the storage room, unfortunately. So I think this year has been a bit of a struggle for her. So I feel like this is a really good middle grade book because I think a lot of kids could relate to this and relate to having to grow up, realize that things aren't as they appear, and to realize that things don't last forever. So I thought it was really good in that sense. This is kind of the middle grade version of what I wanted the Pallbearers Club to be by Paul Tremblay. I didn't happen to like that book. I wanted it to be more like this, where you actually had kids that were, you know, having to deal with death and cemeteries and funeral homes and all of that stuff. And so this is kind of what I wanted from his book, but obviously it's more middle grade, and I wanted that one to be an adult version of that. But anyways, I don't have any problems with this book. I don't have any qualms. I thought it was really fantastic, so I would give it 5 stars. So yay, not a bad way to spend an October afternoon. That's all I have for you, so I will see you in the next video. I post every Friday. Let me know in the comments down below what's your favorite Halloween read. Please hit that like button if you liked this video. Please subscribe to my channel if you feel so inclined, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya!